Young men are having less sex than ever before. In the last decade alone, we've seen the number of sexless men between the ages of 18 and 30 increase by over 253%. Yet common sense suggests that we should have seen an opposite trend. Over the past few decades, our society has become far less conservative about sexuality. Things like premarital sex, birth control, friends with benefits, or cohabitation before marriage have not only become widely accepted, but a cultural norm. And with new tech like dating apps and social media, it's easier than ever for men and women to meet potential partners, far more in fact than they could have ever imagined just decades ago. Not to mention that entire communities, brands, and organizations have grown to help men navigate the complex world of female desire. And we now have a far clearer and more evidence-based understanding of the answer to the old adage question, what do women want? So what the F happened? While plenty of influencers and so-called experts have tried to make sense of this trend, they have only scratched the surface. And in this video, I'm going to share the real reasons that men are struggling to find partners, get into relationships, and are having less sex than ever. But first, let's start with the mainstream explanations. Distracted and disconnected. How modern lives are killing our sexuality. According to most experts and mainstream narratives, the answer is pretty simple. Since the late 90s, we've seen an unprecedented rise in high dopamine distractions that cost almost nothing. Most notably, porn, video games, TV, and social media. For most of the 20th century, pornography was only available through magazines, VHS, or DVD tapes that offered only a few scenes or one set of actors and actresses. But after the mid-90s, every man with an internet connection unlocked limitless access to every fantasy imaginable that was very convincing to the human brain that this was the real thing. And in just a decade, smartphones would make this all available in your pocket and for free. Suddenly, men were able to see stunningly gorgeous women they could have never imagined dating in the real world, let alone ever seen naked, doing whatever he wanted with unlimited novelty for free in your pocket. This led to a decrease in the drive and motivation to meet women in the real world since their sexual needs were superficially met and their brain was satisfied. And also, men became less interested in women in the real world who didn't look or act like the women in porn. Why risk the pain of rejection when you can get off to the most beautiful women from the comfort of your own home for free with no drama? And at the same time, unlimited porn became mainstream. We saw the rise of addictive social media and video games created by neuroscientists, apps, and games that give men the illusion of progress, winning, and status even, but mostly just rushes of unearned dopamine, trapping them on a neurological level and causing men to be distracted even more and pursue women even less in real life, all stunting a man's growth. And if all of that wasn't bad enough, research has suggested that testosterone levels in men have been declining over the decades. One often cited study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism in 2007 observed a substantial drop in US men's testosterone levels since the 1980s, with average levels declining by about 1% a year. This means, for instance, that a man who is 65 years old in 2002 would have testosterone levels 15% lower than a 65-year-old man in 1987, meaning that as a population, we biologically have less drive and desire to find, date, and procreate with a woman. On the surface, all of this makes sense. Our brains have been hijacked by billion-dollar corporations on a mission to keep us distracted, sedated, and buying into their addictive apps, games, and vices. Our bodies and minds have been wrecked by sedentary lifestyles, toxic foods and household items, and chronic stress. And it's no wonder that our sex lives are suffering as a result. At least until you start to dig deeper into the data. Lies, damn lies, and statistics. Why the explanations of male sexlessness don't add up. Here's where things get interesting. If you look at the graph plotting the decline in male sexual activity, you'll notice a few trends. First, we see a significant spike in the mid to late 90s with the number of sexless men reaching nearly 20%. If we follow along with the porn leads to sexlessness hypothesis, this would make sense as the internet hit mainstream in homes around the mid-90s. The problem is, this trend doesn't hold. And by 2008, we see the numbers return to the baseline of just over 10%. If porn, video games, and low testosterone alone were to blame, this wouldn't add up. The early 2000s brought about a renaissance of high dopamine, low-cost distractions. Internet speeds increased, computers and laptops became staple in average homes. American homes and game consoles like PlayStation and Xbox brought higher quality and more addictive gaming to millions of men in their bedrooms. Then, after about 2008, the numbers started to rise again. And for more than 15 years, it hasn't stopped rising. So what's going on? How do we make sense of these seemingly nonsensical numbers, correlation, causation, and clarity? After we escape from the surface layer, thinkers and internet gurus stuck on the narrative that porn equals sexless men, we start to find individuals who offer a more compelling story about the rise of sexless men. But there are still plot holes in the narratives they share, because the alternative conclusion many experts have drawn is that the inception of Tinder, Bumble, and OnlyFans is to blame for the rise of celibate men. If we look at this hypothesis only on the basis of correlation, it seems to pan out, with the two biggest spikes in sexless men occurring in 2008 and 2016, the years when the iPhone 3G and Tinder and OnlyFans were released respectively. But when we dig deeper, again, we're left with more questions than answers. How could the launch of a hookup app designed to help men and women have easier and more abundant access to dating and sexual encounters decrease the number of men having sex? What else is going on here? Looking at the launch of the platform OnlyFans, it seems like our questions start to seem clear. Because with OnlyFans, men are not only able to get sexual release from the comfort of their own homes or even bedrooms, but they now get the illusion of intimacy and connection that comes from supporting creators. We went from consuming adult content one way to engaging with adult content two-way, back and forth in real time. Instead of scrolling through an endless stream of random porn stars, men are now actively connecting with specific creators or artists or models on their favorite social media channels and paying a lot of money to talk and pay for their private adult content on platforms like OnlyFans. Today, there are over 400,000 new users signing up to OnlyFans per day and 5,000 new creators signing up per day creating content. From live chats to paid special requests, OnlyFans and platforms like it took the damaging potential of porn to a whole new level that is just getting started. But there's still more to the story, because even though OnlyFans has likely contributed greatly to the rise of sexless men, and by 2023 there are over 180 million users, but in 2018 there was only 1 million, making it unlikely that the platform had a significant difference on men's sexual behavior at the time, but most definitely into the future. So what else is happening here? If all of the mainstream narratives around the rise of sexless men break down the second we explore them further, how do we actually explain the trend beyond the surface layer? I wrestled with this question for months while researching this video until I came across a piece of data that started to bring all of the pieces of the puzzle together that no one was talking about. A new narrative, sexual orientation, and incel inequality. Remember the graph that I shared earlier? Well, here's the interesting thing. With a little more digging, I discovered that the numbers shown only apply to heterosexual men. Men inside of the homosexual community haven't experienced a noticeable decline in sexual activity. And this might seem like a small incident, but this single finding flips the mainstream narrative on its entire head. Almost everything available about the rise of sexless men that is talked about on other platforms and on this platform is not the full picture. If the rise in sexless young men was simply a matter of low testosterone, unlimited access to porn, and a greater volume of high dopamine distractions like video games and social media, then common sense would suggest that all men would be affected equally, regardless of their sexual orientation, because all men would be susceptible to these powerful forces. But all men aren't affected equally by these forces. Gay men are just as sexually active as ever, which suggests that something bigger is at play between heterosexual men and the women they desire. Something not just biological or technological, but sociological. Although porn and video games in our vice-driven society are problematic, and I believe they do contribute to the perfect storm that is facing men today, there's another force at play that most social influencers just didn't see. The unprecedented shift not only in gender roles, but the shifts in power dynamics between men and women in the last several decades. The tilting scales of masculine and feminine power. As men's power has decreased steadily in value through distractions over the past few decades, women's power has increased significantly. Women have the ability to increase their value intellectually, socioeconomically, and physically. Intellectually, women are graduating college at higher rates than men. Financially, women are earning more and making up an increasingly large portion of the workforce. In fact, according to a study by the Wharton Business School, women in Fortune 100 executive roles get promoted faster than men for the first time ever. And physically, it's no mystery. How to build an attractive female physique. Women now have the ability to augment their appearance through plastic surgery, Botox, BBLs, and countless other treatments, and ability they're capitalizing on in droves. Couple all of this with a society that encourages women's sexual liberation, devalues male sexual power, and labels masculinity as toxic, and a much clearer picture starts to emerge. Now, I'm not saying that these things are inherently bad, and this is not a battle cry to go back to the past at all. This is simply an acknowledgement and an analysis of an often overlooked factor contributing to the rise of sexless men. Because for the first time in modern history, women not only have equal power, they have increasingly more power than men socially and sexually if she chooses to pursue that. And when this happens, the consequences are inevitable. As a woman's value increases, average men whose value is stagnant or decreasing lose sexual access to those women who have increased in their value. It's a simple supply and demand curve. In the work world, when you have more people applying to work at a company than the company has positions to fill, they can be more selective and only choose the best candidates. It's the same thing in the world of dating and relationships. In the past, women weren't allowed to even open bank accounts, vote, or work most jobs. They couldn't get loans or go to college or protect themselves physically in most cases. And even for women who had financial means, society looked at relationships and sex very differently. A woman who didn't have a man or children by age 25 was demeaned and seen as socially less and undesirable. So in the past, most men by default were automatically valuable because they offered important upsides for her survival and social standing and her own kids. But today, men have less inherent value by default. And men who don't develop romantic and relationship skills necessary to attract and keep a high-quality woman will find themselves alone and sexless faster than ever before. A large number of Western women no longer need a man for financial support or physical protection. They no longer face the same overwhelming social pressures to be a good girl who finds a good boy and gets married and has kids by age 25 and stays loyal to that man for the rest of her life. If it doesn't work out, or if there are too many arguments or problems or disagreements, the government will save her and force the man to pay up. And on top of that, there are numerous social systems in place that will give her the money she needs to survive. It's no longer a hot girl summer sort of thing. It's basically entirely acceptable for a woman to enjoy a hot girl decade and defer a partner or having children and settling down until she's well into her 30s. Instead, she's focusing on her career. She's exploring her sexuality. She's dating many different types of men to suit different emotions, often at the same time, or different stages of her life. She'll want a different type of man and enjoy the abundance of opportunities that are available to her as she goes out and as she travels. Entertainment and nightlife experiences that are basically all catering around the world to attractive single women. What is entertainment and nightlife without attractive women? Not only are these things no longer socially discouraged, but for the first time in recent history, women are actually encouraged to avoid settling down and to enjoy a life of self-sufficiency, independence from men, not just independence by having a good job, but when they have a good income, it is often correlated with I am now independent from men and I can make my own decisions. and to explore their sexual freedom and become a quote-unquote badass bitch. Only decades ago, society bemoaned women for carelessly exercising these freedoms. It's now encouraged and viewed and purported by many leading female influencers as the right way to live their life. They have made this lifestyle cool. With platforms like OnlyFans, women are able to earn more than Ivy League doctors simply by posting new content or even just their feet. And keep in mind, there are 5,000 new models signing up a day. Nightclubs and exclusive venues often allow single women to enter for free, and often their drinks or tables are also free. And even if they don't, then there are dozens of sex-starved men who will ensure that the drinks and the bottle service and all the drugs are flowing freely at night. With sugar dating rampant in every city in America, women are regularly rewarded for dating up, with generous monthly allowances simply for spending time and often being intimate around a wealthy man. There are millions and millions of the whole sugar baby, sugar daddy thing going on in basically every Western country. It is much bigger than most people think. I do have a documentary I created about that you can click right here and check that out. But furthermore, women are no longer encouraged to find a good man and settle down early in their lives. In their teens and 20s and even in their early 30s, it is not necessarily the target goal, as we're seeing a shift in female behavior in the last decade. In many female minds, they have little need for a man to provide for them financially or protect their physical safety. There's little incentive to tolerate anything less from a man than perfection from the men that they date. What's wild is when a woman just isn't happy with her partner, it's easier to leave and open up the apps and social media and just start taking some photos than to work on the existing relationship with the man who loves her. We have a society that invests more in how to recover and move on from a partner than how to actually work through the challenges in relationships and developing communication skills and learning how to build trust and connection and intimacy within a relationship. Those are often viewed as, no, I don't have the right partner. That's the problem. So instead, let me just dump this one and find the next one, leaving men struggling. Because let's face it, post-breakup, women have it much easier if she is an attractive woman who has access to every man in her city through a dating app or on social media, versus a guy who will now have to go through a tremendous amount of work to get himself to date again. Because the social rewards are simply too great and opportunities are everywhere in every city in America for an attractive single woman to exist. This is evidenced by the fact that, according to a 2015 study from the American Sociological Association, women initiate almost 70% of divorces. And it just makes sense. Why bother going to couples therapy or working through conflict when she can go out with her single friends and have fun adventures and enjoy a season of casual sex before finding a better and likely more successful, powerful man? Women don't need to be in long-term relationships. They don't need to be married. They'd rather go to brunch with a bunch of friends than have a horrible dating experience. The death of the average male. Ultimately, all of these trends have coalesced to create the society in which hypergamy, a woman's tendency to exclusively date men who are above her on the social hierarchy, is no longer the exception but norm. You must understand hypergamy to truly understand why men are having less sex. If a woman isn't dating a man who has higher value than she does, she's perfectly okay today and moving forward. She's okay to be single, have short-term sexual flings, and simply enjoy her life with her single friends, go to Coachella, travel to Miami, go to Bali, go to Mykonos. Today, Western women don't need average men. They will only entertain men if they add great value to her already good life. Now, a woman can organically create a good life for herself and enjoy an entire season or decade of sleeping around and exploring men, and while at the same time calling this her own journey of sort of understanding what she wants in relationships, and that's her choosing. But before, that wasn't an option. she needed a man to have a good life. So in order for a woman who's doing well in her life to be open to the idea of a long-term relationship, to be exclusive to that man, the man's value has to be greater than her sexual freedom, career and social opportunities, and even friends. So just a few decades ago, this really wasn't the case. Women had less social and professional value, so her pool of men to choose from was the majority of men who were just somewhat gentlemanly and had a decent job. She didn't have access to all the men in her area through social media and dating apps. So as a result, in the past, the first few men that she encountered, maybe in school or at work or in her immediate local area, often had very high chances of dating and mating with her. Back then, as long as he could provide a basic lifestyle, fix things, buy gifts on special occasions, and wasn't abusive, he was seen as a catch. But today, she can provide for herself. She can pay for a handyman to fix things. She makes her own money to buy herself nice things and can pay for her own rent or just have roommates and get a nice place in a nice part of town with some of her best friends, which for many women is a really fun adventure anyways. When women have more power and abundance and options, hypergamy is inevitable. Hypergamy is a term in social science when women date someone with higher social and economic status to provide a better lifestyle for herself, family, and children. The reason why men are having less sex is because women have increased so much in value that they have surpassed the majority of men socially and economically in recent decades. And since women prefer to date up hypergamy, then any men below her social and financial value are likely to be invisible to her. They don't stand a chance, and these men become sexless and struggle to find quality women to date, so they often are going to hide in other vices and distractions, which perpetuates a vicious cycle for that man. And even if a man is in a relationship with a woman, if things in a relationship get rocky, she'll face the temptation to leave her partner in pursuit of a man who's even higher up the social strata. Men in relationships or men who are married are still experiencing the effects of women who are in a new social and financial and economic place in their life where they have friends who are living this life and they are paying attention. To add fuel to the fire, through the rise of dating apps and social media, women are now receiving an unprecedented level of validation. And this is true for women at almost every level of the social hierarchy. The most beautiful and high-status women not only receive unending validation from men in the real world, but dozens, hundreds, and in some cases, thousands of men online. Even so-called average girls are able to receive more praise and validation through a simple Instagram post than they could have received in a lifetime just a few decades ago. Every woman who is posting something that is attractive basically has their own magazine that is available to all men in the world to view, and it costs nothing for her to distribute that content. Meaning that in addition to the actual increase in the modern woman's value, there's been a marked increase in their perceived value, whether it's real or not. Women who would have gladly dated an average guy just 20 years ago are now demanding their very own Henry Cavill or Chris Hemsworth. Some women have a new term and are now demanding he's got to be 6'6", which is 6 feet, he makes 6 figs, and he's 6 inches in size. The challenge for women is she has grown so much in her life personally and professionally that she has outgrown the majority of men socially and even economically, so she can only date a very limited pool of high-value men, which she can find very easily or who have already found her through dating apps and social media. Yet these men also, often men at the highest level who understand what's going on and are high-value men, these men have many options and often don't want to settle with just any woman. So if she's reasonably attractive, young, has a degree, a job, and takes care of her body, her self-perceived value is very high, and the attention that she's receiving from men is even higher in most cases. For the sake of simplicity, if she's an 8, then any man below an 8 in her view is out of the picture. He's not even on her radar at all. Like, no matter how funny, sweet, or caring he is, if you're not an 8, 9, or a 10, then she's not even thinking about dating that type of a guy. In the past, it may have been her value was actually just a 4. So men who are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 all had access to her. Today, that's not the case. Because of the abundance of options she has, she's only interested in men who are above her. And this actually creates just as many problems for women as it does for men. Because as more women are drawn to and feel entitled to high-value men, and as the pool of high-value men becomes smaller and smaller, as the majority of men are falling and succumbing to the vices and distractions and the sleepless zombie-like state of the masses, it leads to a simple but brutal breakdown in the supply and demand curve of the sexual marketplace. As women's value has risen, the demand for high-value men has risen with it. As a result, we've created a sexual marketplace plagued by a winner-takes-all effect. A small handful of high-value men who get it are having the majority of the sex. So more and more women are sleeping with these rare men that are hard to find, yet these men are less inclined to marry these women, settle down, or have a family so soon as well. As a result, according to a study conducted by Morgan Stanley, more than 50% of women are expected to be childless and single by 2030. And so on both sides of the equation, we're seeing problems arise. Where do we go from here? It's important to acknowledge that a sexless man doesn't just happen by surprise. There are ingredients that make a sexless male. And so it's important for men to simply identify those and then reverse them into the positive counterpart. The ingredients that make a sexless man must come first: the loss of power, hiding in life, not showing up, vices, distractions, being overweight, not socializing with women or even high status men, not having any dating or relationship skills, not leading your own life, a lack of masculine energy, a loss of identity. He's not building, he's not leading, he's following, he's not becoming, he's just existing, not finding access to the types of women you want and just hoping that by mere luck something is going to happen, not knowing what to do and say when you do encounter the types of women that you want. What's interesting is these are all just behaviors and skills that can be improved upon no matter where you are as a man. Every man can grow, every man can progress, and you have to own where you are, take the steps necessary to improve. You have to accept reality and stop being a victim and accept the cards that you've been dealt and replace them with more productive and attractive behaviors, habits, and routines that yield results by simply doing the opposite of what a sexless man does. Although there are forces against you socially and even politically and economically, you can still improve and grow. So men must accept that no one is coming to save you. If you are experiencing struggle with women, it will not change just by happenstance. You must accept a new journey. Man has to build, he has to become, he has to create his value and shape his identity into the type of man that he wants. He must live in alignment to his true values and vision. You must let go of being addicted to vices and instant gratification and low effort, high dopamine reward activity that doesn't serve you. From this point forward, the men who refuse to grow and accept a journey, they will struggle to find and maintain relations with women, and they will likely be forced to settle, not have actually what they do want with women, or they will not have relations with women at all. But there is hope, because at the end of the day, what we're facing is a simple problem of supply and demand. Social shifts have created conditions where there's a greater demand for high-value men than there is supply for those men, which means that the solution is simple. Increase the supply by becoming a high-value man. More than ever before, we need strong, growth-oriented, grounded men. Men who are attracted to high-quality women and making a meaningful impact in their world, living in alignment to their values and vision. Men must realize that there is no one coming to fix this problem for you, and society's distraction actions will only blind you to this truth. So if you're struggling with dating and relationships, it's on you to develop the skills, which means anyone can learn and improve to attract and maintain a high quality relationship in your life. If you aren't willing to take responsibility and take action, it will only get worse from here. But the good news is that it's actually easier than ever before for a man to become higher status and increase his value, because most men aren't showing up to this game of life at all. They're lost, they're hiding, they're sedating, they're escaping from life. They aren't even really in the game, they're on the sidelines. They're often overweight, they're isolated, addicted, even addicted to work. Just chasing money can be a form. A lot of very successful men are sexless. Money does not necessarily mean that you are going to have a great relationship and that women will be interested, although it could help if you are using it correctly and channeling those resources correctly. There's also, of course, video games are getting better than ever. There's AR and VR and all kinds of amazing things happening to video games and social media and even porn. That's going to be quite terrifying for men if they don't get a hold of these new things happening that are going to be coming out. They're already here and they're only going to get better. Many men are just terrified of women and even more terrified of owning their power and masculinity as men. So you must flip the script. If you can show up to the game of life, develop social and relationship skills, focus on a purpose bigger than yourself, and become an active player and hero, you'll instantly be more attractive than 90% of the other men out there. And if this resonates and you want to see what this would actually look like step by step, like how do I actually do this, then I've already prepared a training below that will show you how you can reclaim your masculine power, become a grounded man, and create a high quality relationship. You can go to knowledgeformen.com/SM or simply click the link in the description below to get instant access to the training. Again, that's knowledgeformen.com/SM or click the link in the description to access this training now and to become a higher value, higher status man who is reclaiming his power, who builds his confidence, who's living in alignment to his values and vision, and a clear path to get out of this society full of vices and distractions that keeps men asleep. Wake up, become the hero of your life. So get the training while I'm still hosting the training. You should do that now, knowledgeformen.com/SM, or just click the link in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please support it by liking this video and subscribe, hit that bell notification so that you can receive more epic, high quality content that helps men reclaim their power and become stronger, more grounded men. Until next time, guys, I'll see you.